But let's bring in Oklahoma Senator and Trump surrogate Markwayne Mullin. Senator, good to see you. So listen, I can see you're in a car and you've been on the campaign trail for a while with President Trump. And we look at the polls, we're in a dead heat, right? Some polls have Trump up, some have Kamala up. But I don't think you get a better read on what's happening in these swing states than by going to the swing states and talking to voters and going to coffee shops and going to breakfast, which is exactly what you're doing. What are you picking up in the swing states across America on who has the edge as we're 4 days away from Election Day?
Well, Sean, in the last 3 days, I have been in Wisconsin, New Mexico, Vegas, Nevada, Phoenix, Arizona. I'm currently in Michigan and headed back to Wisconsin right now. And I tell you, the crowds for President Trump has been just overwhelming. Right now, we're speaking to a crowd of several thousand here in Detroit. And I'll tell you, the UAW workers for President Trump is in a large scale. I was looking at some of those pictures, and I can tell you the crowd here is much bigger. Right. They say that 65 to 70% of the UAW workers are for President Trump. When we were in Albuquerque, New Mexico, we had this. It was amazing. I mean, in Albuquerque, we didn't know how many people would show up. There was thousands there, and a crowd that had slept literally on the ground, waiting for an opportunity to hear President Trump's speech. Last night when we ended in Phoenix, Arizona, there was a crowd of over 20,000 people there. And, when you're interacting with these individuals, they all are very pro-Trump. And I saw a poll today and a story that was written about a guy that says that he believes these polls are under polling. They're using old numbers. They're not seeing the real numbers out there. And I think I just don't see how President Trump doesn't win. Now, I'm not one that's going out and celebrating victory yet, but in Vegas yesterday, they had a betting out there, and they had President Trump 97% likely to win. So maybe Vegas has it right. I hope they do.
Since you mentioned Nevada, Senator, so Nevada is really the only state that matters when it comes to early voting. And John Ralston, who is not a fan of President Trump, but he's a great number cruncher, he's been looking at the early voting. I say Nevada is the only one that matters because, like, looking back 4 years ago, 90% of the vote was cast before Election Day. And if you look at early voting, and early voting ends tomorrow, the GOP is up 44,500 votes, or 4.7 percentage points. And you can talk about that, but also Senate races and your insight into those.
You know, the early voting, everywhere we go, President Trump always asks how many has already voted. And I would say just overwhelmingly 75% of the crowd all say they voted early. Now, what the Trump machine does really well is they know everybody that's in their rallies, right? And so they immediately start following up, making sure that they have voted. And so I think that number is probably correct. Early voting GOPs have showed up in record numbers, early voting already. You start looking at, since we were talking about Nevada, I don't know how you want to say that. I'll say it however you want me to say it, Dagan, because I'm scared of you. But if you start looking at Nevada itself, Sam Brown just went up by 1 point today, and Trump is carrying Nevada by 4 or 5 points, which is bringing Sam Brown up. You have Tim Sheehy that's up by anywhere between 8 and 10 points in Montana. Of course, Governor Justice is won West Virginia. Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania is up by 1 or 2. Trump is up by 2 to 3 there. You have Mike Rogers that we saw a poll right before he went on stage today in Detroit. Mike Rogers is up by almost 2 points. That puts Trump up by 2 to 3 points. Wow. Eric in Wisconsin, he's up or dead even. And some ballots have him just a little below that. I think the weakest Senate candidate we have right now in a battleground state is Carrie Lake. Not that she's a weak candidate, her numbers are the weakest.
In Arizona,
and I think Trump will have to win Arizona by 53 or 54 to bring Carrie Lake up. But man, all these battleground states show how good the GOP did with recruiting good people to run in the Senate. We're going to win the Senate. I think our
Right.
floor is 53 now. And we could get 54, which would be, as Shauna, you would know, means a lot for a midterm. Because if we go into the midterm with 54 seats, that means we could probably hold on the Senate for a while.
The low water mark there is 51 for sure, maybe 53, maybe 54 to your point. But let's move to this because Team Trump, they've been vowing to slash government spending, and they plan to put Elon Musk, as we've all heard, in charge of that task. He says the number to cut is $2 trillion, but Mama Musk says her son is just being modest. Watch this.
I think more than $2 trillion. I think he was just being modest. He can do, I mean, look what he's done with Twitter to X. It's incredible. And then, of course, Tesla was idiotic to do. We heard it's idiotic. SpaceX was idiotic. And how's he doing now?
Senator, real quick, what number can we cut out of just wasteful and fraudulent spending in the federal government?
Well, we actually was watching that interview on the plane, and President Trump was like, "I just love that woman. She's so awesome and so elegant." I think we can easily cut 1.8, and what I mean by that, because that's our deficit spending. We have plenty of room to cut, but 1.8 is our target because we want to end deficits, and then we got to start looking at everything else. So when Elon said 2 million, he's hitting that, or 2 trillion, he's hitting that 1.8, which is exactly what our target is, which is exactly where President Trump wants to be. There's no reason why we're running a deficit when we're the wealthiest nation and have the largest economy in the world. We just have to cut the fat out, and we have a tremendous amount of fat, and our national debt is becoming a true crisis for us. We are now paying more to service our national debt, meaning just paying interest alone, than we're investing in our military. That's not sustainable, and that has to change.
Senator Markwayne Mullin, a pleasure, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Safe.